In December of last year, there was a story that came out of Fort Worth, Texas. And there's a sister by the name of Jacqueline Craig. Now, she ended up calling the Fort Worth Police Department because a Caucasian male choked her child for littering. So as we reported on that video, the police officer showed up. The police officer had a little attitude, defending the Caucasian male instead of defending the minor child. And as you saw in the original report, the cop started to be abusive and arrest Jacqueline Craig and also her daughter as well. The following month, Bodycam footage was released, and we also showed that on this channel. And then in May of this year, the police department was accusing two black police officers by the name of Abdul Pridgeon and Vance Keyes of leaking the body cam footage and also putting out the personnel record of the Caucasian male cop who was involved in the incident. And once we put out that video, the family of Abdul Pridgeon contacted me the following day. And they told me that Abdul would like to speak to me about the video that we produced. I spoke to the brother, real good brother, and he also appreciated all the support that the people was giving himself and also Vance Keyes. I spoke to Vance Keyes after that, real good brother as well. So in the midst of us speaking, Vance wanted to tell his story. So we traveled to Fort Worth, Texas to hear his side of the story. Today we're here with Captain Keyes. We are live in location in Fort Worth, Texas. Captain Keyes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Captain Keyes, before we get into the meat of the Jacqueline Craig case and what the media alleged that you and your partner done,
Okay.
let's talk about you just a little bit.
Okay.
Where you from?
Originally from Eastern North Carolina, right along the coast, a town of no more than probably 2,000 people, and that's probably being generous. So I'm a country boy originally.
Oh, country boy, yeah.
On a farm, working in a garden, picking tobacco, outhouse, believe it or not, in the early 1980s, outhouse, no running water, pump carrying water, so I'm not unaccustomed to hard work.
So have you always wanted to be a police officer?
You know, little kids fantasize about certain things. I thought I was going to be a police officer or join the military. I ended up doing both. I left high school, joined the Marine Corps, spent 5 years there, got out, did telecommunications. Wound up thinking to myself, you know what, I could probably be a police officer and be pretty good at it. When I got to high school, it was like no way. The Rodney King incident was going on. There were several things that were going on that made me kind of, distance myself from that ambition or that goal of wanting to be a police officer. But later, I said, yeah, you know what, I could do that. That's something I thought about doing when I was little. The military prepared me for the discipline and rank structure. So yeah, that's how I got into policing.
So when you was a police officer, and have you had any encounters that possibly made you be afraid to be a police officer?
I can't say that I've had any encounters that have made me afraid to be a police officer. I've had encounters that have made me cautious of how I do my job. But as far as being afraid, I think only a fool's not afraid. So there's a healthy dose of fear in anything you do, and that's the same for law enforcement.
Because a lot of these cases that we've been seeing, like Philando Castile for one, we can have Alton Sterling, many other cases, we keep hearing the same narrative of I was in fear for my life. And it seems to us in the general public that if you are so afraid, why are you doing that job? And it seems like more Caucasian males are involved with these incidents and saying fear more than any other police officer. And
I think that's accurate. I think it's a cultural thing. I think that fear is born of something they have in their background. Now, there is a legitimate fear if you're pointing a weapon at me, if you're doing something that's going to cause me to actually be in bodily fear. But just to say that I'm in fear because you're a black male or a Latino male, that's unjustified. And a lot of times I think those are the justifications. What we say in law enforcement is you articulate why you did a certain thing. Well, we can use that to be saying you're explaining something, or you're contriving something, or you're making a narrative up to fit the action that you took. And a lot of times if you do have that fear, what is that fear based on? I mean, because I can tell you, being a black police officer, I've never been afraid of somebody because they're black or they're African American, or I may be cautious of what you're doing, but that's with any race. So I think, again, that if you hear those catchphrases, I was in fear of my life or whatever, yes, it has some legitimacy, but don't take it on face value. Let what the officer's actions did match what that person did.
So this fear that we're talking about, we notice this fear is more so, it seems like inherent bias and outright racism.
There is implicit bias in everybody, and police officers aren't exempt. I will say this, the culture of policing, the history of policing, if anybody has studied any American history, they know that there's a volatility between police officers and African Americans. There always has been since our Reconstruction, when African Americans were first set free. A lot of those laws were made to control black populations. And so that carries on. Now, we don't discuss it, but those things carry on. There was a study in 1944, the gentleman's name was Gunnar Myrdal, who was a Swedish sociologist, and what he found was that nearly half of all the murders, now I'm not talking about justified killings, but nearly half of all the murders of African Americans were committed by police officers. And I want to say the years are 1920 to 1932, don't hold me on that, but the study was done in 1944, and that was groundbreaking research at that day and time, because nobody was doing research on errant uses of police force or police murder of African American individuals at that time.
Well, the FBI came out with a report in 2006, and then recently another report that we spoke about out of The Intercept and many other publications, that white supremacist groups have infiltrated law enforcement so much. We also look at the Dallas shooting. One of those officers that were killed, he had a white supremacist tattoo on him. They also call them ghost skins. Now, let's ask you this question. Why is it that's allowed on police departments? You have outright terrorists behind a badge, and they're waging a race war.
I can't answer that question. If that is in fact the case, you have avowed racists that are members of an organization that's sworn to protect the public. I can't fathom any explanation for why any police chief or any executive would allow that person to serve on their police force. I will say this, there's a lot of times that they'll say, well, that person has the freedom of speech, and that person can say this, or that person can say that, and we can't take away that constitutional right. And I think that's an excuse if that person has communicated that they are indeed a racist and they do not value everybody equally, that they treat people differently based on their skin color, then I think that's an issue, and they shouldn't be in law enforcement.
So they can say the N-word or other racial slurs, and it's used as freedom of speech?
We have had officers, and not just on my department where I work, but on other departments where they've used racial slurs, and they have not been terminated. They have not been fired. In some cases, they received light to no discipline. And these are stories that you can find in the media. You can go to Google, you can pull them up, where an officer used a racial slur, or an officer said something that was racially insensitive, and they weren't held accountable for it.
So it goes back to what you were saying earlier about them being in a possible white supremacist group. If they using words and it's considered freedom of speech and we can't take that away, then why would they fire them for being in a group allegedly? Why would they? If it's, remember, it's freedom of speech.
They don't. And a lot of times what I've seen is we've gotten away from addressing those issues. Now, I'll say this, if there's a black person or there's an African American and they're assumed to be in a militant organization or a pseudo anti-governmental establishment, or whatever the case may be, there's going to be hell to pay, and there's going to be attention, spotlighted, a microscope on that person's activities. And so that's what it is. And it's not just in policing, but policing is where I work, and that's what I'm familiar with. But I think it's systemic across the United States. Again, I love where I'm from. I was born in North Carolina, joined the Marine Corps. I've been a police officer for 17 years, but I know that this institution of policing is a racist institution. America is a society built on racism. And like I just told you earlier, how can you have a foundation that's racist, but the fruits of that foundation are not inherently racist? And so we don't fix it unless we talk about it. And that's what we don't do in policing. We don't have hard conversations about racial misconduct and racial treatment of African Americans, at least not with each other. We may do it when the spotlight's put on us with the media, but we don't have those conversations internally.
Now, do you think black people should be afraid of the police based off of everything you just said?
I'm a black person, and at times, and it took me a long time, I'm afraid of the police in some instances. And I used to didn't be that way. I wrote a dissertation on use of force and race, and in my dissertation, I say, no, I'm not afraid of police officers on or off duty. I'm not afraid of black people. But it becomes to where now, in this day and age, you're seeing that black people are doing everything that they're being asked to do by police officers, and they're still shot. They're still being tasered. They're still having themselves batoned, and there is no justification for that. So what I'm telling you is that there is a real valid fear for African Americans to be afraid of police officers within the context of what we've seen in the past 5 to 6 years. Yes.
So since they're complying, and we see literally in society, these police officers are rewarded by a lot of Caucasians by giving them big GoFundMes. The mainstream media support them. You see the support. They tried to demonize the victim, no matter what they did in their past. What can the black community do when you literally have a occupying force occupying your community, and even if you're not a criminal, you're worried with a police officer?
Documentation, documentation, documentation. These things you've mentioned, it wasn't spotlighted until people start, guess what? Photographing police officers. No, I don't want to be photographed, but if I'm doing my job, I shouldn't be concerned with you photographing me. We also have to come forward and start speaking up against police brutality. One of the things that I've found in the black community is historically we don't complain when police officers abuse us. Either we think they're not going to do anything, or it's going to cause me more heat, or I got a couple of traffic warrants, so we tend to look the other way, and we've got this culture. And you know what I'm talking about? Oh, there's no snitching. Well, cops have that same culture, only it's not called snitching, it's called ratting, or it's called the blue wall of, wall of silence. You've got to break that and talk about it. So if I see somebody abusing you and I don't step up and do my part, shame on me. If you see somebody abusing me and you don't step up, shame on you. And that's what we have to do as a community. Hold ourselves accountable and hold the police accountable that police our communities.
Now let's talk about the police unions.
The police unions, okay.
The police unions, from what I have seen, are very powerful in the United States of America.
Very powerful. And they're very powerful because you have the collective body of the police agency. Most times the majority of police officers are a member in some form or fashion of that police union, and they pay dues to that police union to be represented and protected by that police union. What I've not seen in my 17 years of law enforcement, I've never seen a police association or a police union come out and say one of their members, an officer, has done something wrong when it comes to uses of force in the community. I have never seen that. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I'm just saying I've never seen that. They will bankroll the defense. They will bankroll an attorney for administrative charges of violations. They do that with the understanding, even if we know our officer's wrong, we're still going to pay. We're still going to pay and support that officer because that's what we do. Now, what other profession does that? Doctors don't do it. Lawyers don't do it. Oh my God, if you're screwing up, get that guy out of here. He's embarrassing us. We're the only profession or occupation, to my knowledge, that does that. To my knowledge. And again, policing is what I'm comfortable with and familiar with.
So the police unions are politically motivated. So would it be safe to say that the local police union donates heavily to the DA's campaign, the judge's campaign?
The police association, the police unions donate heavily to county officials and city officials. And they'll actually put out signs telling you who exactly they're supporting. And they're going to give money to that person. So when that person's elected, that person becomes one of their constituents, if you will. If you want our continued support, then maybe you'll do something that favors the police association. Now, the way it's designed is the police association is supposed to have an interest in management, labor, negotiations, and those pay and benefits and those retirement, those types of things. But historically, they'll step outside that role and they'll try to dictate policy to police executives and to elected officials on how they should respond when there are errant uses of force by police officers in the community. And so, yes, they have a lot of power and a lot of influence.
Let's talk about whistleblowers. I have done stories on police officers, don't matter anything about color, that spoke up about things that were wrong, and they have been ridiculed, not by the public, but they've been ridiculed by their supervisors and other police officers like they were a traitor for turning someone in. Why is it that's happening?
It goes back to, I'm a police officer, you're a police officer. No matter what I do, no matter what you do, we should have each other's backs. Now, there's limits and rules to it, but for the most part, if you thump somebody or you tune somebody up, as used to be common in the old days, or just common terminology, it means you use force on somebody, well, that person had it coming. That person was a jerk. That person smarted off. That person disrespected you. That person was a thug. And so you didn't do anything that didn't need to be done. And if I tell on you, or if I inform on you now, oh my God, we can't trust that guy to have our backs, because guess what? We do the same thing. It's culturally accepted, or at least it was. And I've not been a police officer for a great deal of time. 17 years is not a long time in the big scheme of things, but it's long enough to see the culture shift from aggressively abusing people to, oh, now we kind of covertly abuse people, and now we still do it, we just don't talk about it. And we've never talked about it, it's just that we're getting caught doing it. I mean, in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, this stuff was going on. People just didn't have cell phone cameras. Don't get it twisted. Don't think all of a sudden, you know, in the 2000s, the late 2000s, that now a police officer's rogue. No, it's always been the case. It just wasn't recorded. So when you ask what the community can do, they can document it. They can be aware of what's going on in their communities.
Now, since you're talking to us about what's the culture in policing,
Yes.
whistleblowing, police unions, etc., are you worried about retaliation against you?
You know, I wasn't. Initially, I thought, I'm a police veteran, I'm educated, I've been doing this job for a long time. I know the system, I know the rules, I know what people should and shouldn't be able to do. But that kind of goes out the window. Am I worried in the sense of being physically afraid? I've not thought that far. When I go on a walk, I take my weapon. And I'm not saying I'm taking my weapon for police officers or anybody else, I'm just taking my weapon. And so there is a fear that at least, because it's already been done, at least professionally, there will be some degree of retaliation against me for speaking to the media, for trying to do the right thing, for speaking here with you. I'm almost certain, and I won't even know when it hits, because that's how it works. You're getting this done to you. And guess what? Why? Because I can do it to you. It's within my rights. It's my prerogative. But yeah, I'm worried about retaliation. But that's not going to stop me from speaking out on what I know is doing the right thing.
So most people in this country support the police. A lot of people, definitely in the Caucasian community, support the police. So for him, say you fear retaliation not from a criminal, but from the police.
Most people don't have the interaction with police that you, and I say you or I, might have as African-American males. We've just talked about it. If I'm doing everything the police officer says, if I'm being compliant, and I'm still shot, I'm still tasered, I'm still batoned, most people don't have that fear or that worry or that concern. So it's very easy for that person to support the police. And it's very easy for me to understand why that person won't understand my concerns as a black, because I'm still a black male. Don't get it twisted. I'm a police officer, but I was born a black male. I'm going to die a black male. I wasn't born a police officer, and if I have my way, I won't die a police officer. So, yeah, I mean, it's a real concern. And again, when I drive, I've got friends and family that don't drive at night. We're having a conversation. I've got family in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. They don't drive at night. Why? They're not worried about thugs. They're not necessarily worried about the KKK or these neo-Nazi groups. They're worried about what's going to happen if I get stopped on I-49 or I-20 at midnight by some rogue police officer and I'm out there by myself. And that is a real concern for African-American people. You know it's the case. I know it's the case. And so to say that people don't fear the police, I mean, I see people telling kids all them, hey, there's a police officer. I'm going to tell you, he's going to take you to jail. That's not right. But that's a historic fear that we have of police.
So basically what you're saying is these black people are living in a state of terrorism.
I would say yes. Yes. I mean, they fear that no matter what they do, they can potentially be victimized by a police officer that's taking rogue action or that's not protecting and serving them.
So all the reports that we constantly see over and over and over, we can look way back to the 60s, we look in the 70s, 80s, and now. Why is it that we see way more Caucasian male police officers involved in police brutality incidents than other groups of cops? Now, I'm not saying other groups of cops don't do it, but I'm saying for the most part, we see uptick of violence with Caucasian male police officers. Why?
There are several reasons for it. One, just by the nature of policing, it is predominantly a white male profession. You're not going to see as many African Americans in policing, and when you do, they're going to be scattered across the wind. I mean, they're going to be in this capacity and that capacity. You got to think there's 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States. A lot of black people are concentrated in large metropolitan areas. So you have some police forces that have no diversity. I mean, that's a very real concern. If you don't understand me culturally, and I'm talking loud with my hands, well, guess what? You may be, you know, confused by what I'm doing. You may think I wish you bodily injury just because I'm talking with my hands. And that's real concern. There's that cultural piece that they don't necessarily understand the types of people that they're policing. There's not a lot of black people to begin with in policing when you go percentage-wise. And then there's not the connection. So if I see you and I'm having a conversation, I'm not going to be afraid of you because you're a tall, large African-American male or you've got some size to you. That's not going to set me off. It just isn't. I'm not going to be in fear of my life because you're an African-American male. I'm not. And I got to report that there are African-American males in the corner selling drugs or they're doing whatever, they're being rowdy. That's not going to set me off as a black male. I think that sets off a lot of white males if you look at what happened in Ferguson. In my opinion, the police officer handled that situation totally wrong. But I'll say this, if that was a black police officer, in my mind, if that were me in that situation, I could have effected an arrest, quite possibly, without the use of deadly force. And whether black police officers said or not, a lot of us think the same way. What you did was overhanded. It was excessive based on that person's response. Now, would they come forward and say it? No, because they fear retaliation. They don't want to be demonized. They have career aspirations. But a lot of us, black police and white police officers for that matter, say, yeah, that was wrong. That was totally wrong. But do we come out and say it? No. Why? Why? It's that blue wall, and we know if you crack that blue wall, guess what? You might get cracked. Professionally.
Wow. So just to hear you say that police officers that want to do the right thing, that want to stand up, they're supposed to be enforcing the law, that should apply to everybody. Their fear of corruption, and they're always saying these bad apples, but it seems like the bad apples is all over the department.
There's a term called noble cause corruption. We're talking about bad apples. It's not the individual police officer that comes on the police department and does these things. It's the environment that allows that person to come on the police department and operate in that fashion. And when they're caught, it's a bad apple. But he wasn't a bad apple until he got caught. I mean, you check the evaluations. And if he was a bad apple, why didn't you do anything to get rid of that person? Now, there are civil service rules in place that protect police officers, and they have a Bill of Rights and everything else. But a lot of times it's simply police supervisors, police managers, police executives, police officers themselves not holding each other accountable for what they do. That's the bottom line. That's it. I mean, there's no way as a police officer I should allow anybody to be violated in front of me. If I took an oath to protect and serve and uphold the law, there is no reason why, because once you break the law as a police officer, guess what you are? You're a criminal. And there is no separation because you have a gun and badge.
Do you think it's a training issue? Because this always spoke about politicians.
No, because if it was a training issue, that one bad apple, if you've got 500 cops or 1,600 cops or 5,000 cops, why is it that they were all trained this way, but it's that 5 to 10% that repeatedly are in trouble for abusing people? If it's a training issue, then why isn't everybody doing that? I mean, why don't we see black police officers, female police officers, old police? How come everybody's not doing it if it's a training issue? Now, sometimes there are certain things that can be corrected by training, but most times, in my opinion, from what I've seen, it is not a mistake of the head, it's a mistake of the heart. They were ill-intentioned.
Let's talk about the Jacqueline Craig case.
Jacqueline Craig case.
So most of us that saw that video, it was initially posted to Facebook.
Okay.
You had a Fort Worth police officer go out there on a call.
Okay.
She stated that the neighbor choked her child.
Okay.
Should have been open and shut case. Shouldn't have been even that far.
In my opinion, regardless of whether if we disagree or not, the child was choked. If an adult male puts his hands on a minor, that should be addressed. And a Class C traffic citation, whatever the case may have been, should not have taken precedence over that piece of the police call, in my opinion. And to categorize somebody as, well, he's littering. Well, he's a kid. I've seen adults litter, and we don't allow adults to be cuffed about the neck or abused or whatever. So in my mind, that was just asinine. It was crazy. And I think any person that's conscientious that watched that video said, this is crazy. What are we seeing? Why is this police officer responding this way? I mean, that was my initial reaction, just as a person, not as a police executive, not as a black man, just as a person. Why is this police officer reacting this way to this mother that's upset that their child was touched? If you're a parent, then you know, I mean, that's just kind of, don't touch my kids, you know, and especially don't touch my kids and justify under the guise that he littered. I just thought that was nonsense.
So as the story went along, as we saw everything on Facebook, we saw the body cam footage come out.
Yes.
And that was put up online. We saw that.
Yes.
And also some personnel files were leaked according to what was put out there.
Okay.
Later on down the line, you were one of the people that they alleged
that
put out personnel files on the body cam footage.
And I'll tell you this, on day one, myself and former Assistant Chief Abdul Prison, before there was any inkling of an investigation, on day one, when it was linked, we talk about police unions and how powerful they are. The president, from what I'm being told, of the police union got to an assistant city manager, and from day one, there's no investigation, remove the 2 black people who are in the chain of command from the investigation. Take them out of the mix because we think they did it as a black family, and they're black executives, and they're in that chain of command, they had access to it. Chances are they leaked it. Where else does it happen in America? It doesn't. So we talk about police unions and how powerful they are. You have typically the number 2 position and 3 position. There's more positions in that rank, but the number 2 and 3 position being removed from an investigation based on speculation that because the family was black and they're conscientious, they must have had something to do with it. Never proven. I was given a polygraph. I agreed to take one. I said, come to my home. You can search my personal computer. My attorney, who I paid handsomely to defend me on bogus criminal charges, wrote up a consent letter, drafted this consent letter, and sent it to the department. The parameters were, you can search this information back not to the date of the alleged leak, but to the date that the officer even was involved in the incident to show there's no conspiracy. And all that I requested was that you simply give me a receipt when you don't find what you say you were looking for, because those files were very large. You'd have to use Hightail or Dropbox to send them. When you don't find what you say you were looking for, give me a receipt saying you did not find what you were looking for, and I'm going to videotape you the entire time you're in my house searching my effects. And you know what they said? Nothing. Not interested. Didn't do it. So if you're an investigator and you want to get at the truth, you follow avenues. You follow every possible avenue. But forget all that. Forget that it was leaked. What did the leaked video show that the Facebook cam didn't show? Nothing. They were just embarrassed that it got leaked, that it showed a different angle, that the things that they were saying weren't accurate, that this person had a history of using errant force against African Americans. Well, okay, so it got leaked. Got leaked. That's bad, not good. It got leaked. But now you're unconcerned that these things happened before. Now the public knows about it, and you're upset because guess what? The public knows this officer had a history of mistreating people, specifically African Americans, black people, and nothing was done. And so to give that person 10 days and say that person was rude, not racist, how do you know that? But me, I'm in my boss's office, as I am every day, 5 to 10 to 15 times a day, and you allege that I was present when he may have downloaded something and that we leaked this to an attorney and we're put on house arrest for 2.5 months and our face is plastered on the media and in the paper nationwide, yet you have this white officer caught on camera of violating somebody's rights, disrespecting a citizen, mistreating someone? Only in America. I mean, and I love America, but once again, you have to understand the history and the foundation, and I'm a black police officer and a black commander. And so if this happens to me and you say, should black people be afraid of the police? Well, I wasn't afraid of the police until I got put on house arrest. You're talking about criminal charges. You can't prove anything. I didn't do anything, but you're potentially talking about locking. I've never had a speeding ticket, first off. Don't get it twisted. Never been arrested, never had a ticket for anything. But now you're saying because this information got leaked, I may be accused of a Class A misdemeanor or a felony and do jail time. That would cause anybody fear. I've got a mortgage. I've got a family that I take care of. So, yeah, there is a real reason for black people to fear police, whether you're internal or external, and we don't have those conversations.
Now, everything that you've been through, and you stated that you was a Marine,
yes, sir.
A veteran.
Yes, sir.
How does that really made you feel that you defended this country and you dealt with that?
It makes me feel that I can enlist in the Marine Corps, as did Abdul Prison. He's a Navy veteran. He attained the rank of chief. That I can serve my country, that I can do everything that I'm expected to do as an American. I vote, I pay taxes, I don't violate the law, I respect other people. It makes me feel that really, when you look at the big scheme of things, the color of my skin takes precedent over anything I have done in the eyes of many. That's how it makes me feel. It doesn't discredit what I've done. It just lets me know that, hey, and I've always known you can be a police officer, an attorney, a physician, a politician, an educator, a banker. Guess what, brother? You're black. Don't forget it. And I've never forgot it. It's just a reminder, should I have the inkling to forget it, I won't, ever. And so in this position, as the captain or a deputy chief or lieutenant sergeant, I'm going to do what I need to do for all people, but I am unapologetically black. And I can say that with all sincerity and mean no disrespect to any other race, culture, or creed. I love who I am and I love my people. And that's part of the reason why I became a police officer. I fell into it, but to help people that are marginalized and people that are disadvantaged and people that need help, and not to go out there and shoot people, not to beat people that are compliant, not to disrespect people. That's not what police officers should be doing. But that's the reason why there's a disconnect between members of the black community and law enforcement at large, because by and large, that's the treatment, whether we get it or not, that's the treatment we perceive we're going to get. And sometimes that's the treatment we expect to get. And that's why we don't come forward when we see police officers violating other people, because we don't want to get caught up in it. And that's the same reason why police officers don't come forward when they see police officers violating other people, because they don't want to get caught up in it.
So the criminal charges were dismissed?
I don't know what they did with the criminal charges, but I didn't do anything. And I said in a press conference before, if you got something, bring it on, because after you don't have anything, I'm going to sue you for false arrest, whatever the case may be, whatever you do. Again, I didn't do anything other than be black and be a commander, be conscientious and do my job. That's all I did. And so if you want to get up here and say, oh, he broke criminal charges, well, show me some evidence. You know, it's funny because I put my charge letter up on Facebook. The pastor of this church, it was put on Facebook, and some of the allegations were that myself and Abdul Pridgen exchanged racist text messages. Let me tell you the content of those racist text messages. I sent the text saying that there's an unequal opportunity in America for blacks or African Americans, and I attached the video, and it showed that from 1964, from the start of the civil rights movement to the early 1980s, when it started to be dismantled, that yeah, we've came a long ways, but there's still a long ways to go, and that was considered racist. That I said that there was a link, I think it was on the route, it was called Colored People's Justice. I sent that link, and oh, when I'm talking about Colored People's Justice, well, that's racial in context, and they must have looked at the video. None of that stuff had anything to do with any link. I'm not a tech person. I know what iCloud is. I never use it. Oh, he doesn't have an iCloud account. I recycle passwords when I sign into. Oh, he's lying about his iCloud account. I let you use my iPad during the investigation that I didn't have to let you use, being transparent. And that's another reason why people don't talk to the police, because, I mean, at the end of the day, if you know you didn't do anything, catch me up if you can, because I know I didn't do anything. But being a police officer, you know what? I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to show you guys you don't have anything. And so it completely refocused from the leak. Well, now it's not about the leak. It's about you being untruthful and you sending racist text messages. And again, I tell you, I challenge anybody to find one racist text message I have ever sent. You can't do it because I don't send them. I just simply speak the truth about race conditions in America, and people don't like that.
Well, let's call it what it is.
Okay.
Caucasians don't like it, period. If
Caucasians don't like it, but not to cut you off, Phil, but some blacks don't like it because it makes them feel uncomfortable when I discuss race and they're not discussing race. So if I say as a black man, we should be doing this. Whoa, 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 let's not talk about that. So it's not just Caucasians. There are some African Americans that get offended by me mentioning race. It's that 5,000-pound elephant in the room. Yeah, there's a racial issue in America. Yeah, and we don't deal with it. And what? It's been there since the 1600s. And we don't deal with it, and we don't talk about it. And now it's 2017, and we're in some post-racial America? No, we're not. We're not in some post-racial America. Race is a very real and valid concern for people. And it's not just black people. That's the problem. People think, oh, it's the black problem in America. No, it's your problem too. These are your tax dollars that are being wasted on what? Lawsuits and unnecessary training and defending arbitrations and taking people's time to have press conferences when if the officer had did his job, guess what? We wouldn't be here. So it's not just a black issue in America. It's not just Caucasians. It's black people that are afraid or unwilling to have conversations about race. It's all of the above. All of the above.
Yeah, when I focus on Caucasians, of course, I'm looking at the bigger system, but yes,
The
black
hegemonic
people.
power structure.
Yes,
You
yes,
got- I got
black
you.
people. I know we got
I got you.
house slaves all day long. We got step and fetch. We got all in our community. I know. So they just want a comfortable spot at their table. That's what they want. They want the crumbs. They good with it. So of course, when you talk about that, wait, don't be talking about that race stuff.
Yeah.
Don't you make massa man?
Because don't get us in trouble with what you're doing or what you're saying doesn't represent us. But I can tell you what I'm saying represents the majority of brothers and sisters that live in America, because whether they cop to it or not, they have a fear of being mistreated based on their race. And if they don't have that fear and they're black, I would ask them, where have you lived for the last 17, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, no matter how old you are, no matter what position they hold. And so I think black police officers, I know black police officers have to step up more, because again, when you see me as a black police officer, at the very least, you should know I'm not going to do anything to you based on race. But you should also feel that because I'm a black police officer and I have that shared cultural understanding of what it means to be black in America, that I'm going to go the extra mile to protect your rights. Not saying white officers don't do it. I'm just saying as a black police officer, I specifically came here to serve everybody, but specifically to serve marginalized populations.
I just wanted to refresh where you said that you sent racist text messages, but yet it was just historical facts.
Yes.
And they say the same thing about me. Some of them who are that way, who are racist, say, I'm racist because I'm showing a factual thing and it's a problem. But when it came to you guys, it was an overwhelming amount of support for you two, that you actually did something great for the community. And it was support from like everybody. It wasn't just black people.
No, it wasn't just black people. We've had several people in the community, white, black, Hispanic, Middle Eastern, that have come and said, look, you guys didn't do anything wrong. You just simply suggested that the officer be fired. And from where we stand, we wouldn't want that officer responding to our house. We wouldn't want that officer dealing with our mothers or our daughters or our aunts or our uncles. We want somebody that's simply going to respect us. Now, mind you, not give us anything special, not give us anything different, just simply respect us. And that's what we want as a people generally. We want respect that we deserve. We're not asking for the world. We're not saying, hey, give me $5. No, we just want respect. And a lot of times we don't get that respect, and then people wonder why we say there's a powder keg in America, while you have these instances of the civil unrest and this, that, and the third. Because guess what? If I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do and that's not working, what else am I going to do? And I think that's the feeling of people in general in America, and especially black people in America. If I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, I'm going to work, I'm paying my taxes, I'm taking care of my kids, I'm doing whatever, I'm doing all these things, and it's still not good enough, you still violate me, then how am I going to get your attention? What am I going to do to make you stop doing that to me? And that's why I'm here talking, because I don't want to see it blow up. I don't want to see some good officer get hurt because some foolish officer did something that was wrong. I don't want to see some citizen get hurt because some officer wasn't culturally aware. But there has to be that dialogue, and there has to be more people that are willing to come out and speak about it. Black, Caucasian, whatever the case may be, you have to say there's a racial issue in America. None of this, I don't see color, because that's nonsense. I've never met a colorblind person that didn't see race. Because if you don't see race, then you don't see privilege. And if you don't see privilege, you don't see marginalization. And if you don't see that, you don't see oppression. So when you say, I'm colorblind, I don't buy that. You see race. You just choose to ignore things that make you uncomfortable when it deals with race. So
let's talk about your GoFundMe and what you are trying to create for police officers who want to speak out.
Okay, so there's two pieces to the GoFundMe. The first piece is, we talked about earlier, you could be a member of an association. I'm not. I dropped the association shortly after I was demonized for trying to simply diversify the department through hiring more African Americans. Oh my God, he wants an all-black police department. Well, historically, we've only had 1 to 2 in our police academies. If I can get 4 or 5 or 9 or an entire black class, who cares? Is what's right for the community, is what's right for the department. But I dropped the association because their thinking wasn't in line with my thinking, first off. They're on some antiquated, let's do some police in 1960 style, and that's not me. But even when I was a member, they did not support me when I disagreed with them. That's just policing 101. If you're a minority in the hegemonic power structure or the police union, mostly Caucasian, mostly male, if you go against their interests, they're not going to support you. So the first part of the GoFundMe is legal representation. And it's not cheap, but that's not the bulk of what the GoFundMe is for. The bulk of the GoFundMe is to start an initiative in transparent and accountable policing. So police officers do have a mechanism that they can come forward and that they can speak. And there's a support system, because right now it does not exist. Again, I'll say I've not seen one police union ever come out and speak against a errant use of force or anything else that a police officer has done. In my 17 years of law enforcement experience, I haven't seen it. So what this initiative is going to do is going to allow officers to come forward and to put it out there. Basically, if you see this, you say this. And you think, well, don't you have that already? Don't you have internal affairs? No. The internal affairs is controlled by the police administration. I was a lieutenant in internal affairs, and I saw racial misconduct. And you know what I did? I went to city council. No, sorry, not city council. I went to the city manager and the assistant city manager and the mayor as a police lieutenant, along with members of the Black Police Officers Association, to contest and complain about the treatment that we saw, not just on the streets, but internally with disparate treatment with black officers. A white officer does this, he gets this. A black officer says, let's fire him, let's do this. And so we contested those things. You know what got us? Absolutely nowhere, because nothing changed. The DOJ, they're not going to take it. You have to have X amount of this and this and this and this and that to get a consent decree. So if the DOJ is not going to get involved, and your own elected officials aren't going to get along, and your police executives aren't going to get involved, then what do? You have to do something that's community-based. There has to be support from the community to put something out there to hold police officers accountable. And that's what the ITAP is. And again, it's an initiative for transparent and accountable policing.
So before we wrap up, what advice can you give the Black community in engaging police? Will we go far with it? Because we established that we should be worried about. But give us some solutions.
You should be worried about it. I know, again, as Black people, men and women, we all want our respect. Demand your respect, but don't put yourselves in harm's way. Don't put yourselves in jeopardy. I've seen young Black males on traffic stops that will turn their music up, and they're basically doing it as a sign of disrespect to the police officer. Part of me gets it. You're young, you're rebellious. But what I don't want to happen is that officer to give that person a directive or a command, and that person doesn't hear him, and that person's shot. So even though we've seen people brutalized and victimized that comply with police officers, it is still in the best interest of our people to comply with the police officer. You're not going to win a battle in the street with the police officer. You might kill 2 or 3, and then they're going to kill you, and you go to prison. I don't advocate violence against police. I'm a police officer. I don't do that. And I don't advocate police officer violence against the citizen, but you're not going to win in the street. If you feel you're mistreated, call the supervisor, call internal affairs, get with your local activists, do whatever you need to do, but don't try to have a war in the streets with the police, because we need conscientious people around doing good things, not being shot or brutalized or locked up or having charges put on them. So that's the advice I'll give to the community. Just unite, stand together, support each other, hold us accountable, white police officers, Black police officers, Latino police, hold everybody accountable, but be accountable unto yourselves. If you see your brother doing something, say, knock that off. That's gonna get you, that's gonna get you knocked or locked up or whatever. So we got to take care of our own, and that goes without saying.
Well, Captain Keyes, I definitely thank you for this informative interview. You shared a lot with me. I've learned a lot that can definitely help me within my commentaries as well. And I want to tell everyone to make sure to go to the GoFundMe. We'll have a link for it that will be provided, and support, because we need police officers that's trying to do the right thing out there more, because it seems like the unions represent the corrupt ones. Well, the people have to support the good ones.
Thank you, sir. Again, I've seen cops I've known for years, and they keep their distance, not because of anything personal, but because they don't want to be considered, well, I'm associating with him, and now, there's the whole, oh my God, I'm talking to Keyes, and Keyes did this, or he's known to do this, and now I've got some on me, and I can't get it off. And so thank you for supporting that initiative.